Be sure to watch my TED Talk on londonreal.tv.
This week on Silicon Reel, we have venture capitalist Nic Brisbourne, founder of Forward Partners.
We're there helping to build the company in a much more meaningful way than a traditional VC. From concept, raw idea, through to Series A. As investors, particularly if you're managing a large fund, you want to be in the best companies in the world. Hope without critical thinking is naivety, and critical thinking without hope is cynicism. Striking the balance is key. Having great judgment is kind of one of the differences between success and failure, ultimately. The world is a smaller and smaller place every year. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Silicon Reel presents Nic Brisbourne, Forward Partners.
Slow down to speed up.
In London, technology is the Silicon Roundabout. Introducing a new talk show dedicated to the people of the London technology startup scene. Silicon Reel. Each week, interviewing entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, financial technology, accelerators, and incubators in an exciting three-person format. Learn about the people behind the innovation. Locally filmed, locally sourced. Silicon Reel. It's about the people. This is Silicon Reel, the weekly talk show dedicated to the people of the London technology startup scene. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Nic Brisbourne, who is the founder of Forward Partners, an investment business which works with e-commerce companies from raw idea through to Series A, offering a package of investment, proven methodologies, and office space. Nic, you have 15 years experience in the VC industry, investing in over 25 companies in London and Silicon Valley as a partner at the venture capital firm DFJ Esprit. We had Simon Cook on as one of our very original guests, like over a year ago, I think. You also author Europe's most popular VC blog, The Equity Kicker. It's fantastic. I was reading through it today. You write a lot, too. It's like once every day or every other day.
Once a day, yeah.
Fantastic viewpoint you have, backed up with lots of scientific evidence, which an MIT engineer loves. Nic, thanks so much for being here, and welcome to Silicon Reel.
Thank you.
You know, we met at the ICE Christmas dinner, and we were hanging out, which is a fantastic group of entrepreneurs here in London that's kind of chaired by Mr. Alex Hoy, who's also been on this show. And we were talking at dinner, and I know you said to me, you were a venture capitalist for so many years, and then you wanted to do something different. You kind of wanted to use a different methodology from the one you were so used to, and the one that we know as VC. And I was wondering what that idea was, and if Forward Partners has become what you had envisioned.
Cool. So in many ways...
How's that for a question?
That's good. I like that. It's become more than... Forward Partners has become more than I envisioned actually. So what I wanted to do was to get earlier stage and to find a way to add much more value to our portfolio companies.
Okay, because you were later stage with VC.
And yeah, we were Series A, Series B, so
okay.
Still pretty early stage, but as businesses get more capital efficient, I increasingly think that really the first money in that first £500,000 is where it gets really exciting. It's where the company's formed, where when things go well, they can go really well, really fast, and you get the most value appreciation.
Okay.
So I wanted to get early stage, and then when you are investing early stage, then there's less money, and so the other parts of the package become more important. And so I started thinking like, well, what does that actually mean, right? What is the other part of the package? What should it be? And what we were doing at DFJ, and what all great VCs, Series A and Series B level around the world have done for a long time is, we work really hard for our portfolio companies, and you make sure that you have a good network of people you can connect them to for sales or for recruitment or to help sell the company, that sort of thing. And then you also work hard to be able to offer them advice at the board table. You have a lot of experience at different companies, how to grow a sales team, how to think about digital marketing, this sort of stuff. But wanted to move beyond the advice and the contact book. And So I talked to a bunch of entrepreneurs, asked the question, well, if you could have help from your investor, what would it be? And everyone majored on biz dev and recruitment. So when I was first thinking about leaving DFJ and adding more value to the portfolio, those were the areas I was thinking about the most. But when I came to Forward and started talking with Neil Hutchinson, the founder of Forward there, they had what was at the time called Forward Labs, and there they were helping build startups from day zero, with help with biz dev and with recruitment, but also with development and design and marketing. And I could see there the beginnings of a package which was just really powerful. Kind of a suite of everything that an entrepreneur needs to get started. And so then, we kind of took that package and thought, how do we work this? How do we make it so it's really attractive, right? So the best entrepreneurs will look at us and say, I want to come to them. I want to work with them to get money and to get the help that they offer, because that will give me the best chance of success. And it really, what any individual entrepreneur needs depends on the skills they have. So we've got one guy that we've just backed who's an amazing digital marketeer. So we're helping him a bit with marketing, but that's not why he's come to us. He's come to us for help with product and design and development. That's where we can make the most difference to him. Maybe a bit of recruitment too. Whereas if I look at I'm not going to name names because they're kind of pointing to the areas where they're not so strong, but I look at some of the others and they're strong on product but maybe don't have the marketing experience, so they're the balance of help that we give is a little bit different.
Okay. And do they help each other as well? Do any of, I guess, I don't know if you call them portfolio companies, but
we call them partner companies.
Partner companies. Yeah. Okay. It's important. Language is important, right?
Yeah, and we do, again, we're different to conventional VCs and we do really partner. It's, we're there helping to build the company in a much more meaningful way than a traditional VC.
We've had lots of VCs on here. I've made sure that I've kind of got a lot of the big ones, whether it's Index, we just had Excel on, we've had Balderton on, and they all come on and say, once you're with us and we cut you the check, you're going to have access to our network and you're going to have our time. But then I look at these guys and they're on the boards of 12 companies. And so I know in theory that's what they want to happen, but oftentimes that breaks down.
Those good funds do a great job of helping their companies. We all as investors do get quite stretched, but I've worked with Index in particular a lot in the past, a bit with Axel, and now actually with Balderton more recently. And they're there helping their companies. And they do work hard for them. So people do get stretched at times, but I think particularly for the successful companies, they really do deliver.
Right, but they're later stage usually anyways.
Yeah, that's the key point for us. So, we like to work with the companies, as I say, from concept, raw idea through to Series A, and then we want to get those companies in great shape for an Index, an Axel, or a Balderton to invest and work with them from there. And then we will start to take more of a back seat as they take more of a front seat.
Right. I'm trying to think of a company that would come to you and the company that might walk in the door and say, Nick, we'd love to work with you. Right now, I'm guessing their options are a few. They can maybe go to an incubator or go to an accelerator or maybe just go straight to angel and try to do it on their own. What are their different options, and why should they maybe choose Forward as opposed to those other options? And these days there seems to be so many options.
Yeah.
Too many options, maybe.
So a little bit more about our investments maybe, and we'll help set the scene for that.
Yeah.
So, we work from raw idea through to Series A, but, we think of our investments as falling really at 2 points on that journey. So one really at the concept stage, that's about half our deals, and then the other half are maybe a year away from Series A, so kind of more seed stage deals than idea stage deals.
Okay.
And so for the idea stage deals, then there are no VCs that want to invest at that stage. Most accelerators these days, certainly the bigger ones, they're a little bit later stage. They want to see companies with product and so on.
Okay.
So those entrepreneurs, their choice is really between us and angels.
Right. Yeah, you've said before that sometimes you're their only option for institutional investment.
Yeah, exactly. Us and angels. Yeah.
Okay. So how do you start that early? How do you recognize someone with a good idea and invest in them? Is that the $1 million question?
Well, that's what we've set at our stall to do, and a lot of investors are going later stage because it's the argument for people only want to invest once there's a product in the market is, it's super cheap to get a product to market. And so if you've got anything about you as an entrepreneur, you can find a way to do that before you need to come to me for money. And then I can have a look at the product and see whether it's resonating with customers. And that's the basis for my due diligence to a large extent.
Right. That's the classical thinking.
Yeah.
And we've heard it so many times on this show. It's the minimum viable product, get it done, go to Google Campus, make sure it happens, and then start talking to people.
Yeah.
And
you see, to me, that misses a huge opportunity, which is, there are a bunch of great entrepreneurs there, particularly business-oriented entrepreneurs. And if you say to them, I only want to talk to you once you've built a product and got a little bit of traction, then, which is the message they've been hearing, then the only option they have is to run around, try and find a tech co-founder, and the business co-founders outnumber the tech co-founders kind of 3 or 4 to 1 in London. We go to these tech co-founder events because they're hunting ground for us.
Right.
And we ask the question, we sponsor these things and do a little talk at the beginning. How many of you here are founders, solo founders? How many of you business? Like maybe 60, 70% of the audience. How many of you are technical founders? And it's like 20%. And so these business-oriented founders, they have to work really hard to sell their companies to these tech co-founders who take very often large stakes, and and they're getting married to people that they barely know. And
so the tech guys are running the business transaction more than the business guys.
Like the balance of supply and demand is way skewed towards.
Is that a London issue? Is that because the business people come here, or is it the same in Cambridge?
It's the same Cambridge, same in California.
Interesting.
And the reason is that if you're a technologist and you want to found a company, then you can build the first version of the product yourself, right? If you haven't, and so half of those guys just do that, right? And so they go out of the market, and so there's always going to be an imbalance.
Interesting.
And so that and that's where we play. So the sweet spot for us is people who've got some experience, got a 5 to 10 years of experience, know the domain well, have got a great idea, and then we can work with them to really flesh out the idea, make sure it's great, make sure that the first version of the product built is one that really resonates with customers. Find those first customers, get the economics looking great, and then raise the Series A.
Okay, so you're looking for the business person with the idea that can't build the MVP, and that's where you specialize.
That's the sweet spot. Yeah.
Okay. Now you specialize in e-commerce. Is that still the case? And why pick such a niche?
So yes, it is still the case, and a big part of what I wanted to do when I left Ford was to be sector focused, and the reason for that is that by being sector focused, you build up some real expertise in an area, and so you make better investment decisions. You're also better able to help your companies because you understand their business better, and your network of contacts becomes stronger in their specific areas. So you become more attractive to the best entrepreneurs, and so that was why I wanted to focus on an area. And if you look at the US, the most successful strategies for venture capital funds over the last 10, 15 years have been twofold. One is the sector-focused fund, so Union Square Ventures stands out as the best example there. They're focused on network businesses.
Okay.
And then the second strategy is higher value add, with Google Ventures, Andreessen Horowitz, and so on. That's kind of younger in its gestation, but that's the other thing that we've picked up.
Okay. As in they really take an active role in the company and brain dump all their knowledge. And like Andreessen Horowitz, they have all of these specialty people as well.
Yeah. So the key thing is you've got a team of people that help you're not just a fund of investors, you're a fund of investors and a team of operators to help the companies.
Okay. So you notice those two things, and that's what you're doing here.
Exactly.
Which is interesting. I haven't heard this business model, and I've done 80 of these shows. So you're kind of doing something unique in London, I would say.
Yeah, no, very much so, yeah.
Okay. And one more question. I mean, I was listening to this series, How to Start a Startup, which I think was Stanford University, and they had a lot of people from Y Combinator there and former grads and a bunch of interesting people. And I think the Y Combinator person said that they ran the numbers on their 200 or 400 startups, and they found that the most successful teams were with 2 or 3 co-founders, and that the ones that did it alone had a very hard time. What's been your experience, or is your idea to take that business guy and marry him with a tech person? How have you found a co-founding team success rate? You're a numbers guy. If you run the numbers statistically, what is it like?
I totally agree with the conclusion coming out of Y Combinator. It's so much easier to run a business if there's 2 or 3 of you at the top. It's a hard business running a startup, as you know, and there's just a million things that come at you all the time. And if you've got a partner at the heart of your business, a co-founder, then there's someone who you can, if a problem comes in, you can have your little panic reaction without upsetting the team or upsetting your investors. That's important. If you have, ideas about how you might solve problems or new things you want to try, someone you can talk to when those ideas are only half baked. All those things are super hard if you don't have a partner, a co-founder at the center of your business. And so we're big believers in the importance of teams. Where we kind of look at it in a bit more detail, though, is do you need to have that partner on day one? If you have that partner, like if you're a business-oriented person, you've got a great idea and you've got a co-founder, then that's great, right? If you've got someone you want to work with out of the traps, that's fantastic. But if you don't, then the best time to find that person is not straight away when your idea is still kind of pretty half-baked and only really exists in PowerPoint. It's in a couple of months when you've validated the idea, you've launched your first version, you've got a few customers, only a small number, and you can go and talk to people and say, look, hey, I've got a real business here. This is a real thing. Do you want to join? And at that point, you unlock a much larger pool of more qualified candidates. And these often are techies, and there's a lot of sort of co-founder CTO types who really want to get involved super early stage in startups, but they've tried it once pairing at kind of day zero with a business-oriented founder, and the thing's flopped because ultimately it probably wasn't a good idea, right? And so when you go to them with a story of the company that's a couple of months in and it's just got much more substance to it, then they say, okay, like I always wanted to join really early stage and this looks great for me now. And they don't get many opportunities to join businesses like that.
Are you a matchmaker of sorts? Are you Match.com for tech in London?
Yeah, but that makes it feel lonely or somehow, doesn't it, right?
It is lonely out there.
But very much so. So talent is one of the key things that we help our companies with, and helping through that process of figuring out, what sort of co-founder is going to be best for you, and then helping them find that person is very much part of how we help.
I can just imagine about the horrible unions that are going on out there when some business guy bumps into some tech guy. They don't know anything about each other, but they've never met anyone like each other, and they just say, okay, let's do it, because I'm in a scarcity mindset right now because I don't have options. I mean, you must see that all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we see people who have paired up in that regard, in that way, and then we look at it and go, like, that's made you as an individual we would have invested in, but now there's two of you, it's not working for us.
Right, and it's over. I mean, it's too late, right? Yeah. And the whole idea is now crushed, and the equity's been split, and now, I mean, like, it's almost you've lost your 1 year, 2 year window, kind of, right?
Well, in the worst case, yes. I mean, so they've got a chance. Maybe we're wrong in that assessment, so they go away and try and do their thing, obviously. But yeah.
Okay. A lot of guys are listening, and women too, and they're thinking, wow, how could I be the business person that would impress Nic? And I'm wondering, what are you looking for? I'm sure there's a bunch of intangibles, but you mentioned earlier you're looking for a certain amount of experience. Are there certain traits, as in they've stuck with jobs in the past, or is it background, education? Is there anything that you found works?
So, there's certainly nothing in background and education. We're huge believers on taking people on merit at the point at which we meet them, not, like they managed to get some degree at a good university or anything like that. So what do we look for? We look for someone who has first and foremost got a great idea and they're passionate about that and they can explain it clearly. And one of the big questions we always have right at the get-go, when an entrepreneur's at the beginning of their journey, it's like, how much are they going to stick with this, right? Do we really think that they want it hard, right? And they're going to stay with it for 5 years or more?
How can you tell that?
Well, so you look at what they've been doing, right? How hard they've been working on this project in the background. So one of the guys we just backed had been, so he handed in his notice on his job the day after he signed the term sheet with us. But for the previous year, he'd been working on this company as a side project, and he had a site live, and he got his first few customers, and he persuaded some developer to work with him for free, and so like you could see and he'd wanted it, and he'd chosen his jobs in order over the previous 5 years in order to build up his experience base.
Okay.
Okay. You could feel he wanted it, right?
Okay. So the CV must tell you something. What they've been doing for the past 5 years. I mean, you must be able to.
So in that case, very much so. One before, a company called Lexu, which is a marketplace connecting small companies with lawyers. There, Daniel was a lawyer before, and so what we liked about that, he really understood the lawyer side of the equation, what drives those guys and girls, and how they were going to, how to make Lexu attractive so that they would work with him, And again, you could really feel the drive. So he had been highly successful in his 5 years as a lawyer. That was a big part of it.
Okay. And do you do multiple meetings over a weeks and months process before you choose, or do you get a good feel right away by people?
So we do get a good feel right away, and that is important. But then we do have a process that we go through. So we keep it quick. We really set ourselves up to be as entrepreneur friendly as we can. And one of the things that investors can be very guilty of is spinning entrepreneurs' wheels. Taking meetings when maybe they're not that likely to invest, and then not saying no when they might.
That's the worst, right?
Yeah. So we really work hard not to do that at all, and to keep our processes very fast and transparent. So the way we work with companies at the idea stage is a couple of meetings, one, maybe 2 meetings, and then we have a workshop process that we use, which is based on the business model canvas, which is a way of looking holistically at the whole company and then working through what are the assumptions behind it, and that helps us to see the assumptions that are being made, and then we have a stack ranking process which says, okay, so these are the most important assumptions by criticality to the business and how easy they are to test. And we look at those and think, do we believe those? So they need to be proven, but what's that gut telling us? And if we think they can be proven, then that's a really great sign for the company. And then we talk with the entrepreneur, right? This is how we're seeing this. Do you see it in the same sort of way? If we invest, the first thing we should do is to try and validate these assumptions. And then that becomes the work plan for the first couple of months after we've invested.
How do you say no? And do you usually try to give it a time frame in your mind when I have to get back and give these people yes or no's?
We try and do it very quickly. We haven't done this yet, but one of the things I'd like to get to in the next year or two is a clear, almost like an SLA for entrepreneurs. Like if you contact us, we'll reply within this sort of time frame, and if you meet us, we'll get back with a decision again within a couple of days. We just started actually sending out questionnaires feedback questionnaires after we meet entrepreneurs.
Nice.
So we can see, we get some feedback, right? Did we set this thing up effectively? Were we present in the meeting appropriately? Did we ask the right questions? Did we get back to you when we said we would?
I want to know what you think is the future of funding for startups in London. Every week I turn around and I seem to see a kind of a new accelerator, a new incubator, a new Fortune 500 company that's coming in and saying, now we're going to accelerate here, accelerate there. And I got a funny feeling that these are going to continue for the next couple of years. And there's so many options. I think there's like 5 or 8 different fintech accelerators out there. Is London over accelerated? Is that the wrong choice for certain people to go on these 90-day programs, or should they be thinking about doing something else?
So I think we do have too many accelerators. I think, particularly corporate accelerators are mushrooming. And if you look at the motivations for corporates, that a lot of these big companies, they desperately want to harness more innovation somehow, and they don't know how to do that. And running an accelerator is one way that might deliver that benefit for them.
It's a cheap
and
way
it's
of
pretty
doing it.
cheap, and
Right.
they get some good column inches, some good marketing benefits. And so I think there's a lot of that going on. I think that, probably they won't get the benefits they hope out of it, but, that's a wave that'll take a couple of years probably to work its way through. That said, depending on the program, right? If you're not taking any equity, then, why not?
Right.
Going to do this for 90 days, you get from free office space, you get your networks get a bit better, and, one of our companies, in the logistics space, as a logistics provider, I wouldn't say who they are, but they're just setting up an accelerator program, and I was like, wow, even they're setting up an accelerator program? What's the deal? No equity, we get to know them a bit better, and we get to meet some other people, and then potentially acquire one day, and so why not, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And the corporate ones don't usually take equity, right?
Some do, some don't.
Okay.
But if they don't, then it's so we backed a company called Dataloop last year that had been through the Microsoft Accelerator.
Right.
And it was just they got free office space and some good networks for 90 days, and they just used that, right?
Yeah, no, I bumped into a few people that have asked me that, and it's kind of like, yeah, what are you doing now? Plus, a lot of people, since they don't have the means outside their current full-time job or whatever they're doing, like, what are you actually going to be doing in 90 days from now? Maybe not much else. So this could be a great way for you to get the knowledge, get a network, talk to people, don't give up equity.
Yeah.
And there's something there. Now, what if you're giving up 8% of the equity and you're going on, a 90 or 100-day startup? Does that change things?
Yeah, totally. Right. That's getting up for 10% of your company.
But it's only 10%.
It's only 10%, but 10% here, 10% there, and pretty soon you're talking real money. And so at that level, some of them are great, some of them are not. And you need to take a very careful decision about whether it's worth 10% of your company. It also depends on what your strengths are. So, as an entrepreneur, so I think what a lot of these accelerators are really good for is helping people to really quickly build out their networks. Particularly if you're coming from a foreign country, from Eastern Europe maybe, you arrive in London, then 90 days with a good accelerator, all of a sudden you're hugely well networked, and that would take you maybe a couple of years otherwise. So that can easily be worth 7-8%.
Right.
What we're doing, working with companies for a much longer period of time, over a year, is that period of time enables us to really build a solid business, right? Help them build a product, get customers, validate the economics, and hence drive a big increase in valuation. In 90 days, there's only so much you can do, right? And so I think that, in most cases, the accelerators are good for the use case I just described.
Okay. Biggest mistake startups make? I know it's a general question, but you see it every day. Plus, you've been in this business for so long. Or these days, that might have changed in the last 2 years.
Yeah. Biggest mistake startups make? I think the easiest mistake to make and the most common mistake is to have your, take the initial vision for a product, an idea, and then just go build that, and not be receptive enough to feedback, not spend enough time talking to customers or talking to customers in the right way. So many companies now, they read the Lean Startup, or at least skimmed it, and they want to build a minimum viable product, and then they don't build the best MVP that they could, right? They build one. Maybe they should have built it here, but they build it over here, a slightly different feature set, and then it doesn't really resonate that well, and they're trying to iterate from the wrong base. Actually, there's a phrase that IDEO use, which is slow down to speed up, which I think is really relevant for startups at the early stages. You take a little bit of time to really understand what are the emotional kind of hot buttons around your product for your customers, and once you understand that, then you choose what your MVP should look like, and then you're in a much stronger place. Right.
So don't go too fast into product, which is what we've heard the market been preaching us for a long time, right? You wrote a blog post recently saying good startup hypotheses must be falsifiable. Is this a little bit about examining your product and examining what your methodology is first?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So it goes into that, definitely into that same milieu. So I think, to the extent that you can have great clarity over what it is you're trying to build and why, and how much of that and how much of that is guesswork at the moment that you're going to test, then you're in a much stronger place. Okay. And it's really easy to want to move super fast, and you kind of know, right? You can feel it and what it should be, and so you just want to build, and and as I say, that can end up with not quite the right product, and then you're starting from the wrong place, and the thing will never be as good as it might have been.
All right. So that's the funny thing about startups is a great founder believes in his vision in a completely irrational way, right? Or he wouldn't be doing what he does.
Yeah.
But also a great founder constantly gets feedback from the market in case they need to pivot. I don't even know if you use that word anymore. So how do you strike the balance? And how do you convince your portfolio companies or partner companies to strike the balance? Because sometimes you're dealing with people that are very passionate.
So striking the balance is key, right? And that's true in so many areas of life, and it's so easy to say and so hard to do. I read another blog post recently about getting the right balance between optimism and critical thinking, which I think really talks to this point.
Cynicism and naivete were the two extremes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Was it hope without something? Is it?
Hope without critical thinking is naivety, and critical thinking without hope is cynicism.
Right.
And you don't want to be either of those, right? You want to be in the middle, but it's a tough balance to strike, and so you need to strive for the balance and knowing when to listen. Because as an entrepreneur, you get all sorts of advice from everyone. Everyone wants to be a mentor these days and take the coffee, and you get all sorts of advice, much of it conflicting. Knowing which bits to take and which bits to ignore isn't easy, and and ultimately that's about your judgment as a founder, and and having great judgment is kind of one of the differences between success and failure ultimately.
Right. So you want the right mentors around you.
Well, you've got to talk to a lot of mentors. It's about knowing which ones to listen to, right? Which ones do you go and see again and which ones do you not?
Right. Talk to me about the boardroom. I know you've had some early experience on boards. I was listening to that same How to Start a Startup series, and someone from one of the companies said that, in all their time, they never remember a board vote, anything but unanimous. And so I think that surprised a lot of people. And I had Philippe Botteri here from Excel a couple weeks ago, and I said, what's it really like at a board meeting? Is it what we think it is, or is it like some movie? What does it really feel like? And I was wondering what you learned about boards, about consensus over the years. And I'll ask you, how does it really work?
So good board meetings are not that different to good meetings, full stop. They are relatively informal, and everyone's clear on what you're trying to achieve and pushes forward to the same objective. Bad board meetings are where everything gets very formal, and people are, I've been in board meetings, actually particularly in the States, where people fall back on formality as a way to avoid difficult discussion.
Okay.
And I say in the States, so it's very common for US companies to have a lawyer present at board meetings, something that we never do over here.
Is that because it's so litigious, or is that just someone that's not doing their homework and not building coalitions, or what is that?
It's interesting. So I think in part because it's litigious, but also because it's interesting, isn't it? I think it's because you end up when the lawyer's there, then you're able to quickly check back on how does any given decision impact on things that the company has done before? And so, so I think you're right. It's because they're litigious and they're more worried than we are here about taking a decision which might be at odds with a contract they've done previously, or and so on. I think it is. Yeah, it must be.
So that makes for a bad board meeting.
Yeah. Well, so then if people want to avoid difficult decisions or difficult discussions, then they can be constantly saying or asking, well, how does this look from a legal perspective, and exploring fear scenarios rather than getting to the heart of the matter.
Okay. And what was your bad experience when you first started out with boards, or what did you learn or fail to do? Yeah.
So when I look back at myself as an early board member, it makes me cringe, and so, I was, at least I thought I was smart, and I'd seen quite a lot of companies and could see the path that the company should be taking, but, and also lots of little things that could be done better. And so the mistake that I made, and it took me a while to, more than one board to learn this, was to try and help the founders, the CEOs on too many levels. Like, I think we should be doing this, A and B and C and D, and what I learned over time was that, by far and away, the most effective way to operate is to figure out which of those is the most important, A, B, or C, or D, and focus on that. Okay. And really just trying to have one thing that you're trying to help with at any given moment.
So one theme at a time.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have to build coalitions with board members? Do you have to always have a discussion going, constantly, not just quarterly at these meetings? Is there any kind of...
So in a good board, then there's relationships between the board members, and and they do talk a lot, and quite often you see these people around at different places anyway. When you start talking about building coalitions, then it starts to sound political, right. And that's if you're into that, then you're into a bad place. Ultimately, if there's any kind of fundamental disagreement between the CEO and any of the other board members, then you're in a difficult place. When everyone's aligned on strategy and what the business should do, then it's easy, right? Then things flow. If there's a fundamental disagreement, then it starts to get difficult because you start interpreting data in different ways. You want to look at things in different ways. You want to talk about different things, and ultimately it's the CEO who controls the company and should control the agenda. But the board member has a certain amount of power. Is in some ways is kind of a little bit the boss of the CEO, and so it just gets very difficult.
I think Ben Horowitz talks about in The Hard Thing About Hard Things, and just the relationship with the board member and a CEO, and how you really need to stay on the same page. And as soon as you get off that page, it makes for a very short tenure tenure or, a lot of tension. So,
yeah, and sometimes you can't, you get off the page, but you're stuck on the same board because you're still invested, and that can be hard to work out.
Right. Let's talk about Horowitz really quick. You mentioned, Andreessen as maybe a model of yours as far as having all of that full service personnel in there. Ben's just taken his first European board seat on TransferWise. It was a big news for us. $1 billion valuation here in London, big investment. What do you think of that firm coming to Europe, coming to London? Is that a sign of things to come? Does this tell us something about what the Valley's looking at as far as abroad, or what would you read on that?
I think that the world is a smaller and smaller place every year, and as investors, particularly if you're managing a large fund, you want to be in the best companies in the world, right? We were talking a little bit earlier on about the number of billion-dollar companies that there are, right? And it needs to be a billion-dollar company or $10 billion company if it's going to move the needle for Andreessen Horowitz now. And there isn't so many of those in the US that they can afford to just focus there. So I think we're going to see more of it.
Right. And it's also interesting because you have a kind of a separate ecosystem that they can kind of invest in that might not be correlated to the Valley or to other, and so you don't know what ideas they're going to come up with or, what they'll learn in a different regulatory environment. Or
yeah, exactly. Different cultures produce different ideas and therefore different types of startups. And for sure. And particularly as the financing environment gets stronger here in Europe and in other startup centers around the world, then we'll see more and more great companies coming out of all these different places, and Silicon Valley's kind of market share of the best companies is only going to decline over time.
Talk to me about the Equity Kicker. That's your blog. Hugely popular, fantastic ideas. How do you come up with the ideas? How are you so prolific? Because I think we've seen the great bloggers or writers really do produce daily content or multiple pieces to try to keep people engaged. How did you come across it? And do you find that the writing actually helps you in your own business?
Yeah, sure. I wouldn't keep doing it just for the blogging. So my routine is to, in the morning I have a few Twitter lists, which I scan and I save articles from those. And then my routine is I spend, half an hour to an hour and a half reading those, and 9 days out of 10, maybe 19 out of 20, my blog idea comes from that.
And that's in the morning? I'm always curious your routines.
So I try to fit it in the morning.
Before you get to the office or in the office?
No, in the office, yeah.
Okay.
So I do the reading sometimes before I go to the office, but I actually do the writing in the office. And so if I have meetings, then it'll be in the afternoon. But one of the first things I'm doing every day is looking at my diary, thinking, when am I going to have time to write my blog post?
Okay, so you try to do one a day?
Yeah. Okay. And I have been, I actually missed a couple of days last week when I was in the office because I was ill and I was running at half speed. But I haven't missed a working day blogging for a long time, really.
And how long have you been doing this for?
So since we spun out of Cazenove, so since June 2006. So I wanted to write the blog when we were at Cazenove Private Equity, but Cazenove had issued something like 6 press releases in 180 years, and so the idea of someone there blogging was like a total no-no. Anyway, so we spun out from Cazenove, and I started blogging straight away after that. Okay,
and some of the titles are fascinating. I mean, they're very nice and simple, and backed by data. You like data, don't you? And so you get a graph there, you get something. Music labels, A Rake Too Far, 2 great rules for writing and life. Facebook is a powerful advertising platform, all with kind of some bar graphs and some information. It's nice and short, and you're just, I guess, what's what you fancy or what is on your radar? Is that what you write about?
Yeah, so I write about what's on my mind and what I'm reading about at the time. And so, if you look at the subjects that I've written about and how it's evolved, it really reflects where I've been investing, so the strategy of DFJ versus forward partners, and then the types of things that I've been investing in, so now you see a lot more stuff about really early stage companies. Then it was a bit more about Series A, Series B when I was at DFJ. So back to the kind of the benefits beyond, so it's nice, it helps build the profile for myself and for forward partners, but the other things that it does for me are twofold, really. One, that really forces that daily rhythm of reading, because it's easy to not find the time for that, so I really like that. And then 2, the act of writing down your thoughts forces you to really complete them and think them through in a way that you just don't, and so it just really helps me to just to be a bit smarter, maybe.
I don't think that's a problem for you, Nick. I got a funny feeling. Do you also find that it's a great, de facto PR move for you, that you get a lot of companies that contact you or they read your blog and they're like, wow, this guy's the real deal. He's not just a guy with a checkbook. Do you find?
Yes, definitely. What I hear all the time is like, even though we barely met or I've not met you before, I feel like I know you because I read your blog every day. So it definitely helps build the profile and build that personal relationship.
Nick and I just shot like a 2-minute video here quickly to phone. And when I was reading your blogs, I was like, it would be great is if you did the same thing on your blog. So I'm just putting that out there as an idea for you, because it's also a great way to complete your thoughts if you have to do it to camera, even if it's 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah,
but
that's interesting.
It could be good. It could be interesting. Again, it's a great way to get your thoughts all together. And I couldn't have done it a few years ago when I started this, but the more and more that I talk to camera now, I can just be like, I can kind of complete an idea. So I'm putting that challenge out.
Then you've got to do it in real time.
Yeah, then you have to do it in real time. But your ideas are very short and contained. So and so I think you could just get them down in a couple minutes. So I'm putting that challenge out to you. Yeah. Maybe one a week.
Yeah, we'll think about that, definitely.
Talk to me about London. If there's one thing that we have to keep our eye on the ball here, to not drop it, to make sure that the ecosystem continues to grow and stay positive and it is a great environment to be, what do we have to focus on?
So, I think we've really got to stay focused on getting to the exits. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And, I come all in favor of celebrating success as companies grow, and be that big customers or raising a Series A or a Series B or a big round from Andreessen Horowitz. But, ultimately that counts for nothing until you get public or you sell the company. So that's the thing to focus on. Okay,
there's something called a media bias, and in technology we suffer it probably 10 times out of any other industry, because you read about it on TechCrunch. I mean, they even say they love funding articles. So you always hear this money here and this money here and this money here, and yet
yeah, exactly.
That's not the story.
It can become a goal in itself, right? I got the Series A from a big brand name investor, and now what do I do, right? And like I say, right, it's about building a sustainable company ultimately, and that's what gets you the exit. So, and ultimately that's really what's most rewarding, I think, for a lot of the best entrepreneurs. It's, that's how you leave a legacy. It's like, I build an amazing company with a great product that people love. Look at TransferWise, right? How much do people love that product?
Yeah.
And I've built a company that I'm proud of because, I love the culture here typically.
Right. And one thing that continues to come up on this show here is, the 7 to 10 year time frame. And I just think, again, from the media bias and the other things that we read, we assume that it's like a 2 or 3 year turnaround, or you hear these stories, and it's just not. If you go back to the numbers, you find out that even the huge success stories, Facebook 7-8 years before they went public, and all of these stories, that it's good to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, there are examples of companies that get to huge valuations really fast, but they're the outliers, and you can't have a strategy of being an outlier. If you're starting a company or investing in a company at day zero, as we do, then you've got to figure it's a 7 to 10 year journey. Absolutely.
Let me ask you a question that I've just been kind of potting around in my head for a while, and I'm by no means an expert, but when people talk about the valuation of a company when they raise money, is that the wrong way of looking at things? Is that a way to really get a weirdly inflated idea in your mind? And should you instead be thinking, okay, Andreessen Horowitz just invested $58 million in TransferWise, and they're going to build that and maybe grow it to a certain percentage. But when we start throwing around this company is worth $1 billion, even though only a small percent of the equity is just traded hands, is that kind of inflate things in our mind in a wrong way?
So it's an imperfect measure of progress is how I would think about it.
Okay.
So if TransferWise is valued at $1 billion by Andreessen Horowitz, then, it's the best number that we've got. It's imperfect for lots of reasons, but ultimately there is no way of knowing from fundamentals or on an absolute basis what their company's worth, and so that is the best guess. But you've got to just keep in mind that it is just a good yardstick, and it's not any kind of like I say, it's not a final valuation, and ultimately it doesn't count for anything unless you get to a sustainable, profitable business and a good exit.
Right. So keep focused on the long-term strategy. Yeah. Let's talk about you personally really quick. You seem like a man who likes to run the numbers on everything and just constantly check, which goes back to your articles as far as looking at the numbers and then constantly making sure your product is doing what you think it's going to do. You've run some things on yourself as well. You refused the caffeine that I tried to push on you in the door, and you found that certain things work for you, certain things don't. I know you said that meditation works well for you. How have you found certain personal habits, maybe reading in the morning, works better for you as opposed to others?
So the one habit that I do religiously, which I love, is so I get up half an hour before Fiona and the kids to go and do some exercise. I have a very quick protein bar, and then I go for a run or do half an hour's exercise at home. And
this is like 6 in the morning, or?
Yeah, 6:30.
Okay,
yeah,
6:30. Okay.
Yeah, maybe 6:45.
Okay. This is the routine for success. You found this works, right?
For me, yeah.
Okay.
And so that gives me more energy, so both longer in the day and kind of makes me feel much more positive. And sometimes it's not possible, right, when I've got too much work or I've got a flight to get or something. And a couple of days without that, and I can really feel it. I get a little bit grouchy. It's like you were talking to me before about your Q test, and that's after a couple of days of not exercising in the morning, I feel a bit like that.
Right. My Q test was, if you're waiting in the queue and you're getting angry at the fact that there's a queue, then you're not keeping an eye on the bigger picture, which is the great place you're in, the companies you're with, the people you're around, and that probably means you haven't maybe done your exercise or done your meditation. So you do the half hour of exercise in the morning, then what's next for you?
So then it's, then the kids start to get up, Fiona starts to get up, and so, I get ready for work, so it's kind of mix of getting ready and a bit of family time, cycle to work, and then get into it. So that's the only kind of really regular habit I have.
Okay. Do you meditate too?
I do meditate, but but not regularly. So one of them, people always laugh a little bit at this, but one of the things I do, one of the times I meditate the most is first thing in the morning. So if I wake up like 15-20 minutes before it's time to go for my run, then I lie there literally in bed and meditate on my back. And I've been told before that's not that's not meditation, that's a lie-in. but that really works for me.
No, don't laugh. That's what I do in the morning. What I do is I wake up, I brush my teeth, and I go back into bed and I sit up against the headboard, and then I do my 20 minutes. Then.
Do you do 20 minutes every morning?
Yeah, I
do.
Cool.
Yeah, I do. See, I would like to do that. I haven't found that.
It's hard because you're doing exercise on top of that, so that makes it like an hour window in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. And then this is the other slightly strange one for meditation. So I cycle around a lot to meetings and so on, and every time I get to the lights, I just kind of get a 30-second, 60-second, depending on how long the lights are, meditation there, really kind of soft focus on the red light, and that makes a difference. Again, I can actually. So when we moved office to our current office, just by Hoxton Square, my commute from home dropped from like 15 minutes to 10 minutes on the bike, and the number of lights dropped from like 5 to 2, and I felt that right immediately.
You missed your meditation.
Missed the light time, yeah.
It's an interesting point. You can get bits of meditation in, and you kind of get bits of quiet time. And it's funny, training can be a form of meditation.
Very much so, yeah.
Reading those articles and compiling your thoughts in the morning at work before people can get in can be a kind of a weird quiet time as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And so doing that reading in the morning and then writing your blog, I'm sure that's really helped you over the years to just get your head in the right space and to get ideas.
Yeah. Yes, and get those thoughts really kind of clear and properly completed.
You must do a lot of communicating. So communicating to people that you work with, to new firms and things like that. And if you think you only have, say, 10 or 20 or 30 seconds to get an idea across to someone, and if it's nice and clear and concise, then you're going to be...
And it takes a lot of work. It's like the Apple cliche. It takes a lot of work to make these products look so simple, and it's the same with ideas.
Right. So, and the best way to do is to practice, is to write or film videos.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing.
Yeah. One of the interesting things for us over the last year and a half at Forward Partners has been, how do we describe ourselves? And then it's kind of as I described it here. We work with companies from concept through to Series A, and is only something we arrived at relatively recently. And when we started saying that, and we've got different stages that we can kind of talk about how that breaks down and how we help companies at different points. All of a sudden, it started. That just really started working with people, particularly with entrepreneurs, and and everything started falling into place. But we had to go through a couple of iterations of things in order to get there, and that, each one wasn't quite perfect, but a bit better than the one before. And you just got to try stuff and iterate and so on.
Yeah, that's so important. A good exercise is take 15 words and make them all words that a 10-year-old would understand, and write out your objective as a business, or describe it.
That's a fun one.
It's a good one. And so make it so your grandma can understand, or someone. And if your grandma can't understand it, then rewrite it into where it's like da 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 da. And so many startups, I've been guilty of it too, don't do that. And yet they'll spend all their time on the product and this and that, and yet they haven't distilled in their own minds and their coworkers' minds exactly what they do. Yeah. Which means that everyone's probably doing something slightly different.
So that is actually one of the tests that we use. When we're trying to think whether an idea is a good one or not, can we distill it into 10 or 15 words, and is there a compelling elevator pitch that we can see right at the beginning?
Right. I had Guy Kawasaki in here, who is a social media guru, and he was the chief evangelist for Apple for 4 years, and he said that every company should have a mantra, which is not their slogan, but which is say 3 words, and so it's like da 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 da, and he was like offering the ones for Spotify and for this and for that, and it's not like, so Nike wasn't just do it. It was, blah, 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 blah. I should remember what he said. But it was interesting if you can try to think of what your mantra is too, by condensing it even more.
So we had to think about that, and for us, I think it's helped great entrepreneurs, Nice. We're about, really helping, and and then we're helping entrepreneurs, but key to the whole business of investing is working with great people, right? Working with great companies ultimately.
And that passes the 10-year-old test because they can understand it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Nick, I always ask everyone here a few questions at the end. I'm going to ask you those same ones. If you could make a phone call to the 20-year-old Nick, I'm guessing he was studying at Cambridge at the time, and give that young man a bit of advice, what would you tell him now that you've seen it all up to this point? What would you tell him to do or not to do?
Yeah, interesting. I would say take it slower and stop trying to think you can have the whole world in 5 years.
Okay. Were you in a bit of a rush?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, back to your kind of marathon versus sprint.
Yes, and I think like a lot of, I don't know whether this is true of a lot of young people, but certainly for me, I was, coming out of Cambridge and thought I could take on the world, probably thought I was a bit smarter than I was, and and they it's really easy to over-index on the importance of smarts versus experience and all these sorts of things, right?
Right. Good advice. I've heard that a couple times before. Best advice you've ever received, business or personal?
Best advice I've ever received.
Maybe something in those early VC days you might have learned from one of the first mentors. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think I've received a lot of great advice over the years, and I'm struggling to bring anything to mind.
Is there any piece that you usually pass on to companies? I mean, you kind of told me one earlier where you said, don't tell them A, B, C, and D, and E. Just like focus on one thing. So focus is a key thing, isn't it? And it's and if I find myself saying one thing more than any other to entrepreneurs, it's that, when you start a company, there's always lots of different opportunities, and quite right, at the early stages, you've got to explore all of them, right? But then when you start to figure which is going to be the main thing for your company, then it really pays dividends to focus heavily on that. And what is quite difficult is to then turn off those other avenues, because you're still not sure whether this one's going to work, and so it's like, that's like giving up on that optionality is difficult for a lot of people. Right, but usually the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Right, because you have to be all in on that single product first, don't you?
And it's a good test, right? If you're not sure enough about the other thing to go all in, then that's, there's a question to ask yourself there too.
Right, that's well said. Last bit of advice to the 20-year-old that's listening out there, at Cambridge somewhere, who wants to be in tech. And man, maybe that's already a bad sign if that's all they want. But you must meet people all the time that have the great ideas or want to pursue this line of work. What do you tell them? What advice do you give them or what they should do?
So I think that the best thing that a young person can do if they want to be an entrepreneur is to join a tech company and be part of a success story. Work with some other people. A great entrepreneur. Learn what they're about. Learn a bit about the market that you want to play in, and then you've got a great experience base, and and hopefully you've kind of become sufficiently familiar with your the areas that excite you to really kind of find that great product. So that would be my advice.
Should they get out there and meet people and kind of go to these things and start talking to people?
Yeah. Networking is hugely important, definitely. Yeah, so one other thing that comes up a lot is, should I share my idea? And
good question, yeah.
To that, my answer is always emphatically yes. Ideas are cheap. The key is really executing on it well, and by keeping your idea to yourself, then you're not going to get other people's input on it, and so when you do come to execute, you're just going to do a much poorer job of it. Much better to talk to everybody about it, and it gets road tested, and you kind of develop it in the right ways, and then you're much more likely to build a great company on the back of it.
Do people sign non-disclosure agreements anymore?
No.
When was the last time you signed one?
When was the last time I signed one? So I did sign one about 2 or 3 years ago when this. It's a Belgian 3D
Don't
printing.
disclose it.
3D printing company that wanted us to sign it, but that was really, and we thought long and hard about it, and we did that because it was a really exciting opportunity, and they were a Belgian company that we kind of thought maybe it's reasonable, not to expect them to kind of think about this the same way as everyone in California and London does.
It's interesting how people are now comfortable with the fact that the idea isn't the value, and it's all about the execution or the perfecting of the idea. Yeah. But if you tell that to someone who thinks the idea is worth a lot, it's really hard to communicate to them that that's just an idea. And
in some sense, it's like, so I have an amazing idea, and you're saying the idea doesn't really count, and it's like, well, I was really proud of my idea, and now you're saying that the ideas don't. So it's a hard message to hear, right? It kind of devalues the thing that you hold precious somehow.
Right. It's very nebulous. Nic Brisbourne, The Equity Kicker is fantastic. People should definitely check that out. Great reads, great way to get new information every day, soon to be on video. How can they get in touch with you if they want to explore Forward Partners? You guys have a great looking website, a lot of great information on there.
Thank you. So get a referral to us is one way. That's the best way to get a conversation going.
Okay. How do they get a referral to you?
Find someone we know.
Okay. So you appreciate a warm intro. That's what you want.
Yeah, we love a warm intro.
Okay.
Reach out on social media, get to know us a little bit. Comment on my blog or follow me on Twitter. All these things would really help. But then the other things that I'd point to are. Once a month we run office hours, and so we meet with, we did one last week actually, and I think we met with 26 entrepreneurs for 15 minutes or so, and so there's open applications for that, and and the hit rate for getting a meeting out of an application there is much higher than emailing us direct, although the meetings are short. And then finally, we run regular events as well, Forward Partners Live. We've got the next one on the 25th of February.
Skimlink's CEO.
Yeah,
that looks great.
Alethea is going to
I might come to that.
Yeah, too. That'd be cool.
Okay.
So I'm at every one. The whole team is at every one of those, and that's a good chance to meet us as well.
Interesting. So and I appreciate the fact that you like a warm intro, not a cold intro. Does that mean someone's done a little bit of due diligence and done some work?
So, what it means is that, someone that we know, that we respect, whose opinion we respect, understands your business or likes you enough to put us in touch, right?
Right. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It means something to me too. On Twitter, they can follow you at Forward Partners. What's your personal Twitter?
At Brisbourne.
At Brisbourne. Okay, fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on. I'm so glad we met, and we had a great conversation at the Ice Dinner. So thanks so much for that. This is exciting. I love reading your blog, and I love to see kind of your perspective. And it's interesting to see how these models, develop. And so how it becomes more nuanced, how these companies get helped, and it's not like the old school way of, this choice or this choice, and there's kind of these hybrid models. So
yeah, there's lots of different models emerging, and I think that's great, right? I think give different options for entrepreneurs, and different entrepreneurs are going to want different things. Hopefully what Forward Partners offers is going to be attractive to a good selection of the best e-commerce entrepreneurs, and we'll do well, but it's certainly not the only way to do things.
It's a sign this industry is maturing in the city. So there you go. Fantastic. As we say on Silicon Reel, it's about the people. Nic, you're one of them. Thanks so much for being here, and I wish you all the best. I hope to see you at your offices this month for that day with the CEO. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Cheers.
This week on Silicon Reel, we have Alex Torres, VP of Global Product Marketing for Move It.
We have 15 million users already worldwide. We currently collect more than 2 billion piece of feedback every 1-2 months. You really need to have that help and that support from your community. Put yourself on your user's shoes. The desktop years are gone. We deliver a new product version every single month. I love mentoring people. I love helping people. And I love networking. Seize the moment in the right way.
On Monday, Silicon Reel presents Alex Torres, Move It.
Take more risks, be more bold.